It's been a very tough 18 months for everybody in healthcare and everybody on the planet because of the pandemic. But when people are calling to execute Kitty, I get very, very annoyed. But surely that wouldn't happen on my channel, Huples, you say. Well, you be the judge. So in the middle of a long thread on a recent video, Matt Haber decided to tell me that doctors and nurses that align themselves with despotic regimes, they should not be surprised when they share their fate. I take that as a threat. Am I right or wrong in taking it as a threat? I don't know. But I don't think that his premise of what he's saying here is true. But I also think even if it was true, which it is not, to call for the overthrow of doctors and nurses who work in healthcare is at all appropriate. However, Shooting with Uncle Dan fully agrees with that statement and even calls the guy who said it Sir, like he has reasons to respect him. So, being me, and I am believing in free speech but not hate speech or harmful speech, I actually said, Matt Haber, you can apologise if you like. He has not responded. I said the same to Shooting with Uncle Dan because supporting somebody's view is the same as agreeing with it, is the same as doing it, in my opinion. I said you can apologise if you like. So the thread continued. Sadly, Dan, I am more than aware of healthcare and would have an expert's knowledge of lies. More likely, you are being lied to and have not the knowledge to know it. The don't need a mask was a lie, and I spoke out against it. Delaying second doses was a lie, and I spoke out against it. Just believing gibberish online and repeating it and agreeing to harm Kitty myself is not acceptable. I expect an apology from you, and soon. Now, Praxis Prepper, good on him, tried to wade into this, and I think he was trying to be nice to us all. And he says, I agree that more people should step up to take responsibility to solve problems and help out. Okay. My concern is that by name-calling and blaming people, it takes their focus off helping out and refocus it on defending themselves and their brains. Being called mean names now begins shutting out of all opposing groups are suggesting. Yeah, this all sounds very fine, but I don't agree. We really are all in this together, and if we can get past the fighting, I think we all really want to help, at least in some way. Yeah, fine sounding words, Praxis. Totally agree with you most of the time. This is my response. True, but those spreading misinformation, lies, and threatening me and Kitty with death are scum, Praxis. He didn't reply, probably straightforward and sensible. Shooting for Uncle Dan, who must have an incredible inability to self-analyse, said, an apology from me? For what? It is me not wearing a mask or taking a shot going to harm you? Yeah, well actually yes, it will harm me, indirectly, Dan. I think that's pretty obvious to anybody. If we're having a pandemic, it's airborne, and not wearing a mask and not being vaccinated is going to increase the number of people who are going to get sick and die, and it's going to keep this going for much longer. However, this is typical what these people do. Uncle Dan, you're not addressing the issue. You agreed with Matt Haber saying that doctors and nurses who work in healthcare to support vaccination deserve the fate of despots. I think it's quite clear what he was meaning, and if it isn't clear to you, perhaps you should actually Google what happens to despots when they're overthrown by a mob. And just to finish it up, because I actually haven't banned or muted either of these guys at this point, though I'm very, very close to it, because I don't actually agree with the freedom to pour hate and violence online to people. Same as I don't agree with people advocating for pedophilia. I don't agree with it. You can state your point of view, but to actually transgress in the way that I think Matt Haber did, and I'd be interested in your views on this. What do you guys think? Am I overreacting? So I gave Uncle Dan, who hasn't responded to this, what I was talking about. So that you can see the original post, that you can see Uncle Dan fully agreeing with it. And then I said to him, to try and get through to him what he did, you agree, Kitty and myself are aligned with despotic regimes and should not be surprised that we share their fate. Consider that you agree with and do the adult thing and say sorry. There is zero excuse for promoting violence against healthcare workers, which is what Matt and yourself, by agreeing, are doing. Free speech is not a pass to promote violence. Dan, never was and never will be. Certainly won't be on my channel. Thanks for watching. Whether you agree COVID's a hoax or not a hoax, whether you agree that vaccination works or not, whether you agree wearing a face mask in an airborne pandemic is a good idea or not, I don't care. What I care about is my subscribers who are vaccine hesitant because of numbnuts out there who are just gathering all of this data to prove their point of view, who are giving studies to me of 9 people to prove that vaccines are more dangerous than not being vaccinated. There's a lot of misinformation. It is complicated about mandates and all the rest of it. I get it. I'm quite happy to engage with people, and sometimes I get a little angry and sometimes I don't. In this case, I was not at all triggering this, and you can go back and see the original postings and the whole thread. This was uncalled for. This was him just saying you deserve to die, like despots do if you promote a healthcare system and work in one that is encouraging people to get vaccines. And I think that's a really dangerous thing. Thanks, and feel free to give me a subscription or unsubscribe me and go off back to your crazy land bubble. Anti-vaxxer violence, because it's becoming more and more extreme and it's not acceptable, and the governments of our place, called the Earth, going to deal with this, and they're going to deal with it in ways that are going to be ineffective to the anti-vaxxers' arguments, but also are going to stomp all over my civil liberties, and not just during the pandemic. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that these groups of violent, aggressive thugs are actually being manipulated. They don't have a coalesced leader. They're being funded and they're being manipulated. And you guys need to figure out who is doing this to me to make me advocate violence against Huples Cat and Kitty, because you've been manipulated and you probably don't even know it. Toodles.
This is a sick baby production.
2021. Oh.
Don't worry, he survives.